The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm running the latest version of the software or the service that I need to be providing on this machine. And so I'm going to go ahead and upgrade packages. I'm warning you right now, I highly don't recommend or advise against upgrading all of your packages. And the reason I wouldn't upgrade all packages is because, well, one, that would take a while and you don't want to sit there waiting around for those packages to upgrade. And two, you could run into some weird package dependency conflicts that might in some way break your machine. So that's why I like to focus on upgrading packages that are actually relevant to things that we need to make sure are secured on this machine. So in this case, because it's running a web service and it's running SSH, we need to make sure that that web service is up to date. We need to make sure that SSH is up to date, right? So I can actually see what web service I'm running. If I do an ss-plunt, in some distros, this is netstat-plunt. This will list my listening ports and the processes, I guess, that are using those ports. And if I grep for 80, which is going to be used for web traffic, you see here we have Apache 2. So we have process ID 877, and we see that the process name is Apache 2. So that's a good indication that we're using Apache 2 as our web server. I'm going to do the same thing for port 22, which is where I expect SSH to be. And here you can see we're using SSHD. So now it's time to try to figure out how those are actually installed. Maybe there's a package associated with those. So I'm going to use apt or yum to list the packages that are installed, and I'm going to see if maybe there's a package for SSH and a package for Apache. So I'm going to say apt list -- installed. If you're using yum, I believe it's yum list and then installed without these two dashes. But in this case, I'm using apt, so I'll say apt list -- installed, and I can search for Apache. It seems like we do have Apache installed here, so I see a bunch of different Apache packages. Here's the main Apache package. We also see that we have PHP installed, so we have this Apache package for PHP. I can also see if we have any PHP packages installed in addition to that. So it seems like we also have PHP installed in addition to that. So along with updating Apache, we might want to update PHP. Remember, those two kind of go hand in hand. So PHP just allows you to serve PHP web files in Apache. The other thing that I'm going to take a look at is if we have any SSH related packages. So here we have OpenSSH client and OpenSSH server. So a good guess is that OpenSSH server is the package that has SSHD in it, right? And is responsible for that SSH server. So these are the packages that I'm going to update. Before I go ahead and update those packages with my package manager, one thing I like to make sure is that Red Team didn't mess with our apt or yum package manager in any way. So I'm going to go to the etc apt directory, and the two places that I think Red Team is most likely to mess with packages here is one, the sources list. So if I take a look at sources.list, again, I'm going to be careful not to modify the contents of this file. This is where we're actually pulling all those packages from, and we should be pulling them from a legitimate source, like for example deb.debian.org. In the case of Debian, it might be ubuntu.org in the case of Ubuntu. But these all look good to me. I'm just going to make sure there's nothing in this file that's unusual, because if an attacker added their own source to this file, then you could be potentially pulling packages that are provided to you by the attacker. That's kind of unlikely. That would take a lot of setup, but who knows how far Red Team goes. So it's always good to check. The next thing I'm going to check is, along with that sources.list file, there's the sources.list.d directory, and that can contain additional sources. So if I look at the files that are here, it doesn't look like there are any files here. So it looks like we're good to go. But if there were files here, I'd browse through those as well. If you're gonna consider making changes to the sources.list file, make sure you, one, you know what you're doing, and two, you make a backup. So I would say like cp sources.list, and I'll cp it to sources.list.back. And then in the event that I make a change and something goes wrong, I can always copy that back over. So I can say cp sources.list.back to sources.list. And that's just going to restore it to what it originally was, right? We want to make sure that we don't actually break anything here. The next thing that Red Team could do is they could actually hold back specific packages so that when you try to upgrade them, it's not going to actually upgrade to a newer version, or it's going to look like the package doesn't exist. There are many ways they could do this. One of the most straightforward ways is in this preferences.d. You can actually choose the order in which packages are installed, and by modifying that, you can include packages that, or you can make packages uninstallable or hold them to a specific revision, right? That could also be in the actual app configuration files. So we have app.conf.d that's going to hold a bunch of configuration files. I don't want to bother searching through all of these. So a trick that I like to do is say grep-horn. As a reminder, -horn with a capital H will recursively search the contents of all of the files in this directory or in a directory that I specify, right? And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to look for the packages that I want to install, because if Red Team's going to do anything to tamper with those packages, it's very likely that the package name is going to be somewhere in these files. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to search for Apache 2. And I'm going to search the current directory I'm in, so I can do that with a dot. You could also explicitly say @c_apt. I'm just going to do it with a dot. It doesn't look like they did anything with Apache 2, or at least Apache 2 isn't referenced in these configuration files. I'm going to do the same thing with PHP. I do see something interesting. We have PHP on lines 88 and on lines 162 here. So I'm going to go to trusted.gpg.d. And I'm just going to nano, and I'm going to take a look at that line 88 for Debian archive buster, security, automatic, ASC. Okay, that looks good. And this doesn't really look like a configuration file to me. This looks like some kind of file that apt needs to do what it's doing. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. That looks pretty good to go. And we should be able to just upgrade those two packages. Then I'm going to also check SSH really quickly just to make sure they didn't do anything with SSH. And I don't see that popping up anywhere. So now we can go ahead and upgrade those packages. Before we actually upgrade any packages, we want to update our apt cache. So we are actually grabbing the latest packages, right? So I can do that with an apt update. And then once that's done, I'm just going to apt upgrade, and I can upgrade Apache 2, PHP, and open SSH server. Oh, sorry, I misspelled upgrade there, so there we go, now I spelled right. And that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and install all those updates. Another thing that you might encounter that I had problems with in a past competition is you might not be able to use apt because it complains about some lock being held by another process. That lock just prevents multiple processes from trying to work with your packages at the same time. So for example, if you're upgrading a package and then at the same time you try to uninstall it, you're not going to be able to because that upgrade is holding a lock on that package. However, if you see that another process that is not you is holding a lock on that apt package, your goal, you might want to dig into that, try to kill that process before you run apt, right? If you're unable to kill that process, then I would only do this as a last resort. But as a last resort, you can actually manually remove that lock on apt. So if you go online, I don't exactly remember where that is, but if I say apt lock file, so it looks like it's in var lib dpkg lock. So I could always say rm var lib dpkg lock. If you're fast, right after that, run your apt update or run your apt upgrade, and then that's going to make sure that's kind of a cheap method for bypassing that lock. The best thing to do would be to actually stop that process that's holding that lock in the first place. But sometimes I've encountered a situation where I wasn't able to do that, and so I could remove that lock manually and then right after that upgrade the package. So just some little tips and tricks.